Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us. Damian Katkhuda is an English singer, songwriter, instrumentalist, and current frontman of experimental pop folk band, the Mostar Diving Club. The band got its start in 2008 and counts as its members Damian, Vicky Osterberg, Worsley, and Michael G. Prior to this, from the years 2002 to 2004, Damien was the main songwriter in the indie pop unit Obi, which also included Dom Hazlehurst, Tom Worsley, and Ben Kempton. Obi released a mini album and one full length before calling it a day. The Mostar Diving Club has issued 5 albums to date, with their latest, Glass Monkeys, appearing last year. Damien also released an album in collaboration with Damien Montagu in 2008, A Long Way From Somewhere. Let's catch up with Mr. Katkhuda and travel with him on his musical journey, past, present, and with a possible glimpse to the future. Well, welcome, Damien.
Hi, nice to see you. Nice to be here.
Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to do this.
No
problem. Well, let's go back to the beginning. Talk about where you were born.
I was born in London. I'm born and bred Londoner in Shepherd's Bush, and I haven't really moved that far away. I mean, I've done a lot of traveling in the meantime, but stuck to my roots.
Yeah. Well, they say home is where the heart is, right?
Yeah,
So
you're exactly. And all my family around here, so it's
okay.
it's nice.
All right. Well, recall any childhood memories?
Well, I mean, there's loads. I mean, we did a lot of musical ventures, or went on long car trips and stuff. We had, none of my family are musical actually, but we played it. My dad's got a lot of music, he collects avidly all genres, nothing escapes him, but he can't sing a note for toffee. But he probably I had a lot of influence through listening to things coming out of the sitting room on Sunday mornings or out of the car stereo.
That sounds like your dad and I have a lot in common.
He hasn't got enough room to put everything.
Right. Look, you're behind me.
I can see.
Wow. Well, what were some of the early influences in some of the music and artists that you enjoyed?
I think I mean, early from him, I don't know what I'd sort of say it was a round mashup. I mean, there was things like Boney M, unusual jazz things that came through, classical music, loads of classical, choral music, nothing in particular from then. I didn't really sort of get fully into it until I heard people playing guitars, like Nick Drake and all those sort of acoustic balladeers, and Woodstock was a very, seeing the film of Woodstock was probably a real moment in my life when I first saw that, and I went and learned all the songs that were on it, like John Sebastian, Arlo Guthrie, and that was really where I sort of got keen on it,
Can you remember one of the first singles or albums that you bought?
The first single, well, I can't really remember. I mean, I definitely remember buying Grease, the film soundtrack, but I was probably about 10.
Right.
And then I went and sold it back to the exchange shop because I went off it in my later phase. I sort of thought, oh God, I don't know if I like that anymore. But now I love it. When I hear it now, I'm like, oh, that's a great record. I should have kept hold of that vinyl.
Right. Yeah. It's funny how your tastes change,
Yeah. I mean, I went through, when I was like 18, I was listening to a lot of Susie and the Banshees and, sort of gothic music, really. A lot of the Fields of the Nephilim and The Cure and all that sort of, it's quite dark, Sister Mercy. And I suppose that's because a lot of my mates were listening to that sort of stuff. So yeah, that was that was the formative year.
Right. Well, you mentioned some of the musicians and bands you're into. Was the guitar the first instrument you learned to play?
No, I learned like loads of instruments before it.
Okay.
But it's the only one. So I was a singer, you know, I sung in choirs and I was quite good at singing. And I played the piano and the violin. And then basically I was taught in those, but never really progressed very far. Didn't enjoy being taught and the structure of it. And then I went to a lecture actually with at my school, and you could go either to church or a talk that had you know, you could do either thing. So I went to this talk, and it was on Paul Kossoff, who was the guitar player in Free.
You're right. Yeah.
His dad was going on a lecture tour warning of the dangers of rock and roll and drugs and all this sort of thing. And anyway, I'd listened to this thing, and every time that he woke up out of a coma, he'd ask for a guitar and play this classical piece of music on the guitar. And after that lecture, I went instantly to someone I knew who had a guitar and worked that song out until I could play it. that was the sort of beginning of my guitar playing, the love of the guitar, and then I just went from there, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you were taught piano lessons.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and violin. But I used to mime in the orchestra, you know, like mime with my bow above the strings because I never knew what was going on. So I didn't really progress on that very well.
I've heard that similar story where it was a little too limiting and structuring, you know, taking the classes.
Yeah, I think, you know, when people sort of telling you what to do and you've got to learn it for the next week and have it, and then they go and then you learn it and they go, no, it's not good enough, you got to do this and that, and
Right.
sort of, well, what do you know?
Right, exactly. You know, you got to branch out on your own. You do.
Yeah,
Spread your wings, as they say. Well, what was your first band?
my first band was a school band,
Mm-hmm.
which played sort of really full-on punk music, and we lasted for about 6 months, and it's called the Rubber Jonathans. It was really, you know, like I was 15 or something. And then the sort of band that got me into doing band stuff was called Jackpot Billywinkle, and we used to play the sort of rush reggae, we called it, and it was we used to play before raves in parties and stuff, and that was a really good band and a lot of really creative musicians in that. And in fact, the drummer from that band became the drummer in Obi.
Is that right? Okay.
And they were, you know, we were basically all students living in a house, having lots of fun, jamming all day, and it was great. You know, it's the easiest job I've ever had in a band because I was rhythm guitar, so I just had to sort of strum, and the reggae, you know, it's like 2 chords just going chat chat chat. So I could be in any state at all, and it all was good. And then that sort of folded after we all left college and everyone went their separate ways. And then I was in about 3 bands in London, and the guitar player from what became Obi said to me, you've got to commit to one, otherwise nothing's going to happen. You know, so I said, okay, well, I'll go with you guys, and we went, and we started doing that. And then there were 4 of us mates from college in the original lineup of Obi, and then one of them who was actually wrote a lot of the songs and the material with, you know, we'd write songs and bring them to rehearsals, and and I always loved his songs. I thought they're brilliant, and I'd sing everything and bring my songs, which were, you know, I was beginning to write songs then. And
you two go ahead.
He sort of he had to, you know, after various things happened, he left, and then we got another bass player who's Tom Worsley, you mentioned in your thing, and then about 2 months later we were signed to Cooking Vinyl. So Toby, the original bass player and songwriter, sort of missed out slightly, which was sad for him.
Yeah,
But he went on to do other things, you know. I still see him now, which is a good lad.
well, can I ask you, are Tom and Will brothers related?
They are cousins, yeah.
Cousins.
So Will actually isn't in the band, in the Mostar Diving Club. He produced it, but he was in an early incarnation. I've got to change that on my bio.
Okay.
And the drummer has left as well. And that's one of the reasons I called it the Mostar Diving Club, is because it could have a sort of revolving backline sort of thing, you know. If people want to stick around, that's great, and if they don't, then we can, you know, we're a club, so we can just get someone else in to replace them. So that's the one on that website. You've got that information on. Is the original, the first lineup, with Will producing the records, the first 3 records he produced, and he played in all those early gigs we did with the band as well. But then he got too busy producing, so he left and was replaced by Jason Boyd, who is now plays most of the bass with us now.
Okay. Yeah, you can't always believe everything you read.
Yeah, you can.
It's not always.
And also, I mean, there's another funny thing from that intro, that Obi actually did another record called Wolves, which I don't know if I've got a copy lying around here. I probably have, but that was the 3rd album with Obi, but we never released it. But it's printed up, and every now and then fans get in touch, and I'll send them the lost album for their perusal, you know. And it's a really good album. It's just we couldn't sort of get it together as a group, you know.
Oh, okay, all righty.
Stick together, yeah.
I think maybe I should start just sending the intro, you know, letting the interviewee read it, you know, first. Say, okay, you tell me all the corrections before I make a fool of myself, right? No, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. Well, going into Obi, I still have my copy, and it's probably going to be, with the reflection, it's not going to.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but you know, with these
yeah.
Stick
You can see it. That was so Ben, the drummer, designed all the artwork for that, and we, you know, that was our sort of artwork initially, and we made like loads of T-shirts and stuff like that. But that's a rare bit of CD you got there.
Yeah,
they're all gone. You know.
I know. Yeah, I know it didn't sell like hotcakes, but
no, it didn't.
No. But I've always been into, you know, the mellower, softer, you know, like you said, singer-songwriter, balladeer, you know, that kind of music, and that it's chock full of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, this is what I normally do, mention a couple of 3 tracks off albums, and then get your take, or maybe the background story.
Yeah.
On those.
Well, hopefully I'll remember.
Right. Get some of those cobwebs dusted off.
Yeah. Let's see which ones you're up for hearing about. And if I fail, I can just tell you the ones I do know.
I know how it is. I know. Believe me. What's in a name is really a nice
yeah.
For that.
That's good. That's just generally about, you know how names are pretty important. You know, like I think how you're named as a person, or how you name a thing, or, you know, is a major way into how you turn out. Or, you know, you don't get many politicians called Spike, you know, or you know, right. So it's all, you know, names are very important and also sort of unimportant. But I can't remember the lyrics totally to that song, but that's kind of what I was getting at with it in a vague way.
Yeah. Well, All That Stars is one of my top picks off of that. Is that a steel guitar?
It's I think it is. Yeah, I think, or maybe it's a Spanish guitar.
Okay.
I think it might be a Spanish guitar, as far as I remember. It's like very stripped back, the production on that, isn't it? And it's yeah, I mean, I haven't listened to it for, you know, a long time, for about probably 20 years. So I should have probably done a bit of homework before I.
Right.
But yeah, all the stuff. That's a really, you know, you're just here for a little bit, and then you go back into the space dust, you know. So
Right.
that was what that was really about.
And Piano Song, another one.
Yeah, and Piano Song was like the first song I wrote on the piano, like after I'd given up after having lessons. Right. So I went back and I found that riff that sort of runs through it, and it was just really, you know, the joy of being able to do a song that wasn't on the guitar, you know, because I played the guitar non-stop for years, and then I went back to them because we had lots of time, you know, in the studio and mucking around and everyone doing their parts, and you could go off to another room and muck around doing, you know, with other instruments and trying to find parts and doing all that. And we had a keyboard that we invested in as a band, you know. That was our first group investment. We like, buy a keyboard, awesome, we're in business now. And Tom, the bass player, used to play all the riffs on the, when we played live, he'd do both instruments because he got quite bored playing the bass, wanted something extra to do. And so we had that, and that's really what I wrote. It's in fact, it's in my studio now, you know, still here, the old band keyboard, which I still use now, you know. Yeah.
So speaking of a recording, how did the recording sessions go typically?
Oh, what the when we did with Obi? Yeah. Well, first album we were given a producer, you know, because we had a record deal with Cooking Vinyl, and they sort of assigned us this producer called Charlie Francis, who did a Magic Land of Radio, and he was, you know, we didn't really know him from Adam. He'd done a bit of work with REM, I think, Rumored, and anyway, we sort of just said about, you know, we put all the stuff. He didn't really, I wouldn't say contributed much to it, that the band hadn't contributed to it ourselves. But then the next album, after we'd sort of done okay, and that, in fact, the Somewhere Nicer, the single off Magic Land of Radio, was done as a B-side for, you know, the record company said, oh, you need to go and make some B-sides for your singles. Yeah. And we went off with Will Worsley, who was Tom's cousin, who didn't have you know, he was in his parents' house, and we went into a bedroom there, and literally in an afternoon we recorded 3 songs, and I think we paid him 50 quid, and that single, Somewhere Nicer, was basically A-listed on all our national stations here in Britain. You know, it went big, and the record company were completely unprepared for what was going to, you know, and so were we, really. So we didn't have a video for it, we didn't have anything ready. We thought it was a B-side, and suddenly it's being played on all these stations all day, every day. In fact, I was working on a building site at the time, and it came on the radio when I was painting some banisters or something, and I was like, this is my song. And they're like, yeah, I'm Picasso, mate, you know. No one believed me, because they're like, what are you doing working on this building site if you've got a song on the radio, you know. Anyway, so we so that was Will Worsley's production on that, and that's why I kind of, when I started the Mostar Diving Club, I looked him up again and did all the music with him, and he's like a super talented and really nice guy, you know, really, you know, does a great job of getting everything sounding nice. And then the next one, I'll just,
well, I wanted to, before we jump ahead,
okay,
I neglected to mention my 2 favorites off of the Magic Land of Radio.
Yeah.
And I kind of vacillate between the 2. Sometimes I like one more, and then I'll go back and listen to the other one. I said, no, this is my favorite. Leave These Shores.
Yeah, I love that one too.
And Afterthought.
Yeah, Afterthought is like, that's one of my favorite songs I've written, really. I really like that, and that's about it's about, again, sort of those heavy themes of life and death, and it's basically about leaving the world, really, behind. Yeah, I that's definitely a good song, and I've played that at a lot of people's sort of funerals and things like that. People sort of go, "Can you play that song?" Get everyone into total emotional trauma.
Right. It's apropos for that. I love the ocean on the shore.
Yeah, well, that was all sort of after planning, because basically it was the first time we'd been in a proper studio. So I was like, right, let's sort of use use some other sound effects and use little things and tricks, and and that's the kind of theme that's run through a lot of the records. I've kind of sat with in front of black and white movies with a dictaphone and sort of recorded lines, or bits, and then sample bits, and at the beginning of most albums there's some kind of strange bit of noise that's not to do with the band itself.
I like that. I think it's very effective. Some of the videos that you've done, I like that. I was going to ask you a little bit about that too.
Yeah. I mean, the really, that came from Grandaddy. That was at that point when Obi was just launching, we were all huge Grandaddy fans, and Pavement, those two bands really we were listening to a lot, and we were trying to be like the English Grandaddy. That was I mean, obviously we missed the mark by quite a distance, but that was what we were trying. And we went to see them playing at Dingwall's, and then a month later we were playing at Dingwall's, and it was kind of like a thing. But they had, in that gig, the bass player, I think, had a dictaphone that he held to the microphone, and the whole band played round this thing, and I thought, that is the coolest thing. I'm gonna nick that idea.
Right. I do. I like that sound too that comes out of that.
They're great.
Yeah, some experimenting never hurts,
Yeah.
Jumping ahead to 2004's Dice Man Lopez.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a couple, and they bookend the CD. Sleep Well, My Dear Friend. Sleep Well, Dear Friend.
That was
again. I like the more mellower, introspective ballads. I like.
That was written for a very dear friend of mine who died when we were quite, when we were in, I guess I was 30 or 29 or something, and he died very suddenly. I was with him when he died, and that was written sort of as a reaction to that for him. So it's quite a full-on number, as they say. Yeah, good. I haven't listened to that for ages as well, but when I do, it's like, I think it's a good tune.
Yeah, I know I'm the type of person that I can just wallow in melancholy.
Well, that's, I'm definitely similar bent. Although I like, it's good to keep things positive, but that's I'd say, but it's sort of beauty, it's a very beautiful.
There you go.
And fits well, and hopefully he's looking down on us, keeping an eye on us. That's the general sentiment behind it. Yeah.
Well, I believe so.
Yeah.
And then my another one, I can't decide between the two. Plague on This House. Wonderful track.
Yeah, that's quite a heavy track as well. Picking out the heavy numbers. So Plague on This House is really a letter to the band. At that stage we were having some real troubles, and basically as soon as it became a business and we had to work, you work really hard for kind of no money really. You're slogging around. We did about 3 tours of Europe, which were long and arduous things, and you're partying and you're playing, and so that song was at the end of that, when it was beginning to sort of implode, or we just argued all the time. So I was like, the plague on this house, get on the piano and give it some give it some vibes, you know. But I don't think they ever listened, you know. I don't think they ever realized, you know. They will now, but I
Of course.
think they realized because, you know, they weren't that sort of interested in the lyrics. The other guys, you know, they were more interested in the tunage.
Right. Well,
Maybe they did, and they never said anything.
they never said anything. A couple of other tracks on there that, I mean, are just not really nice. Well, and you know, I don't always, you know, fall for the really melancholy ones or the slower. Little Things has a nice message in it. And
Yeah.
upbeat but nice track.
Yeah. That's nice. That was like a sort of, you know, yeah, that's a happy tune.
Yeah. It's a little more happy.
Yeah. And there were a lot, you know, like you know, The Tale of Old Rodriguez, you know, all those sort of upbeat one, you know, basically when we toured the Magic Land, and it was you know, it was a really quiet, sensitive album. When you're going to places where no one really knows who you are and your support band, you know, it's difficult to pull over the crowd with unless you just turn everything up to 11 and go, listen to this, you bastard, you know. So that's when we set out to do Dice Man Lopez. We said, right, we've got to get louder, so we can control the audience, really. And that was, and Hugh Jones was brought in to do that, who'd done like Echo and the Bunnymen and a few other things. And and we went and lived in a studio for that one. That was sort of old school. Spend 3 months in a studio in Lincolnshire, kind of tearing your hair out. And so yeah, that was quite fun. It did, yeah.
I'm sure that didn't help relationships between the band.
No, it didn't. I mean, most people left. I think by the end of it, for the last month, I was there on my own with Hugh, who we nicknamed Nosferatu because he basically didn't seem to sleep or eat. He just drank Holston pills and smoked cigarettes sort of non-stop. And I was left down there with him to finish mixing it and getting all the final bits done and the vocals and all that sort of thing. So then it came out. Dice Man. It's good.
Another track, the Sweetest Silver, has some nice guitar work on that.
Yeah. I mean, that's Dom Hazel has a very unique style of playing the guitar, which is what probably made the sound what it was. And he'd do, you know, when we were rehearsing, he'd always try something different, you know. So we'd be rehearsing for a gig, and we'd get to his part in the song, and something different would come out. You'd be like, Dom, what are you doing? So I'm trying something different. Like, you settled on it now. You don't, you know. I think it's just because when you're rehearsing, you're just repeating everything so much that people sort of get bored and want to go off, you know. So that was it's nice. He's good. He's a lovely guitar player and a good person too.
Then the one last track off of there, to Some Folk, nice melodic rocking track.
Yeah, that's I've very proud. That was our favorite one to do live, actually.
Okay,
that was my personal favorite anyway, because it had, you know, it starts really nicely and then it goes off into a big crescendo, and it was really fun to play that, and the sentiment behind it was pretty nice as well. I like the sort of, in fact I've got it here. It says, he is just a quiet man and she is like a firework. Yeah, that was pretty much summed up things at the time. You know what I mean?
Opposite track, yeah. Whatever. Right. Well, did you want to mention, talk a little bit about the previously omitted third CD?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great, because it's, you know, it deserves a bit of recognition, because you know, the songs on it are fun. You know, I'd really liked it, and we recorded it with a guy who was the keyboard player from Jamiroquai, and he was an old friend of mine from school, and he had an amazing studio at home in the country, and he said, you know, if you want to come and do it, I've just built this studio, I need something to practice on, come and do a third album here. So we were just about clinging on to each other as a band at that point, but we got all these songs, and it was a lot more, it was a lot more sort of, I think it's really great record, but it's sadly very few people have heard it. So it shall remain a mystery unless you want to get in touch, and I'll send you one. Got boxes of bloody things. Yeah,
that would be nice. That would be
yeah.
nice.
Well, yeah, definitely send you one.
Yeah. Well, let's wait till the end of the interview to make sure you're not just totally opposed to say, well, I don't really want to host this interview. Wait and see. Yeah, they turn you off completely. How did you and the film composer, music producer Damien Montagu, how'd you guys get together?
So that happened quite strangely. That was after Obi, after I did Wolves, and then I was like scratching around, going, what am I gonna do? And I was working actually at the same time. I was working on the Mostar stuff. I'd written quite a lot of the tunes for that first album of Mostar, and then I had like a load of other songs knocking around that were probably going to go by the wayside. Certainly most of that album, a long way from somewhere, that it was probably going to be, it was probably songs that I wasn't ever going to do anything with. But I met Damien on a night out somewhere. I knew him before, and he made music, and we'd done a few adverts together and things like that. And he said, I really want to make an album, but I can't write any songs. And I said, well, I've got loads of songs. If you will, I'll bring them to the studio and we can just see what happens. So he basically paid for the studio, it was his studio, and he, any musician that we wanted to have along, he'd get them in. And my thing was to provide the songs and really the production of it. And, we sort of did that together. But he'd get in, so we'd go, oh, it'd be great to have some trumpets here. And he'd go, I know so and so and so and so. And, and suddenly we had a trumpet section in the studio, doing. So it was really good fun. It was like an experiment. But it was really just to keep me busy between, until I got my sort of solo situation sorted out with the record company and everything. I just did it as a kind of fun thing, and we did a few gigs. I played a few festivals with it and did funny things. But Damien didn't come and play live with it. So I was suddenly going round on journeys, and he'd be sitting at home, and we'd be sharing everything. I was like, this is quite an interesting arrangement. I think I don't know if I should continue. But anyway, I still see him around as well.
Maybe he felt the stage was too small for two Damien,
Maybe. Yeah, quite possible. He's a piano player, so he probably wanted to bring his.
Were you pleased with the result?
Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, it's an interesting record because it's very, it's kind of different from. I mean, there's still me singing, and they're very sort of beautiful songs. But yeah, I do. I like it. When I listen to it now, I'm like, oh, that's really nice. Maybe after we'd finished it, I was probably like, oh God. You put time as a great healer, and you sort of feel that things are. I think it's a nice record. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've never really put anything out that I wasn't happy to put out. So I mean, I'm happy with all the music really. And when I listen to it after a long time, I'm like, oh, that's actually not bad. But when you're right in it, which we'll come on to later, I'm sure, because there's another album that's gone by the wayside. But anyway, that's another story.
Well, for those who don't know, tell us where the name the Mostar Diving Club originates.
It's actually the Mostar, so it's pronounced Mostar, but it's a place in Yugoslavia where my dad's family originate, from this town, and it's a very beautiful medieval town, and it's got a very well-known bridge in it, which is 11th century, I think, bridge bound with egg whites, and it's beautiful. They now have a Red Bull diving competition off it. And anyway, I was there with my brother, going to meet some family that we'd never met before, when you know, we're quite late on in life, and I'd never met my first cousins. So we'd arranged this trip to go out, and it was slightly through the Pavarotti Music Centre, which was built after the war in Mostar by Pavarotti, and Bono, I think, contributed to it. And it's like a, you know, state-of-the-art studio in this really tiny town, you know. And anyway, they sort of said, you can come and stay here while you're in Mostar. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And they wanted me to try and attract bands to come over and use the studio, because basically the people who live there, who are in bands, can't really afford to go into it because it's too expensive. So it's a bit of a crazy idea.
A little dichotomy and everything.
Yeah. And so anyway, we got out there, and we went to the bridge, and on the bridge there was a little plaque saying the Mostar Divers Club, and it's basically a club of young men who would jump off the bridge for money. And I was like, oh, that's quite, I'll just change it to diving instead of divers, and they might not come after me. so I basically, and I thought it was appropriate, because it's like a sort of, you know, the jumping off the bridge traditionally has been for as a rite of passage to manhood, you know. So when you get to a certain age, you jump off this bridge, and it's really high. It's like 27 meters or something. So you have to train up, as all along the river they have platforms that get progressively higher until you reach the big one, and then you go off. And I've never done it before you ask.
And what is the river? The river
it's
there?
called the Naritva.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. You know, it's a really beautiful spot in the world. Sadly, the war in the 90s pretty decimated a lot of the buildings, and a lot of the old town really got bombed quite badly. But it's, you know, they're sort of vaguely coming back together, but it's, you know, it's a long old race. And as my cousin said to me, if you want trouble, you'll find it. That was their advice to me when we went out. So I'll keep my politics to myself.
Right, exactly. Don't want to ask for trouble there. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, your family definitely has some rich heritage there.
And goes
whatnot.
back a long way, basically, to there. And they also went to, well, I mean, it's a long and complicated thing, which takes a while to explain. They've moved around a lot.
Okay, you can share a little. I mean, you kind of
Well, they basically, when the Ottomans came up through Europe, they basically you know, forced everybody to convert. They were all Austro-Hungarians originally living in that part of the world, in Bosnia and in Mostar. And the Ottomans came up and said, if you want to keep your land and your farms and everything, convert to Islam, and we will allow you to continue living the way you are, but we're going to take your oldest son and for brainwashing in Constantinople, and then put them back as Katkhudas, which is where my surname comes from, in their area to look after and maintain the status quo. And then so that happened, and then the Austro-Hungarians in 1830, I think, came back in to Bosnia and took everyone, you know, forced all the people who converted to leave because they were no longer, you know, so the people that were actually the original, you know. So anyway, my family had to leave in that 1830s departure, and they I think 100 families got on a boat and went down the coast aiming to go to Egypt. And when they got to Alexandria, there was a big battle going on with the British in the port. So they decided to carry on. and they ended up in Caesarea in Palestine,
Yeah.
and that's where they settled for like 100 years until they they were all kicked out of there as well, and so they then went back to Bosnia, and so then that's where they ended their days. My grandparents were in Bosnia, my uncle and cousins were all back in Mostar by the end. So it's quite a mad big circle.
What about your parents? When did they
Well,
immigrate?
my dad came over to England when he was very young, and never went back really. It was in the days when you couldn't get home very easily.
Okay.
So they stayed, and he became very Anglophiled and met my mum, who's a Yorkshire lass, and that was it. They were we were here for the next generation.
Right. Well, see, that's those are nice stories to hear like that, and that would be very intriguing to the viewers. I know people like to hear those kind of backstories and things like that. Well, thank you for sharing that a little bit of, Well, let's go jumping back to the music. Talk about how all the members came together for Mostar.
So the Mostar was basically the initial band was, well, I just did it with Will Worsley, who produced Somewhere Nicer of Obi, and he had a studio up in and basically, as you might gather, I'm always going to studios because I'm not very good on the equipment. I'm good at writing. In fact, I have now got a little studio where I record stuff, but I knew he had a studio, and I asked him if he'd be up for doing the record, and he said, yeah, that'd be great. And so we settled in for about, probably took about a month, and we just literally, there was no holes barred, so we could just do whatever the hell came to our mind. So he had loads of mad instruments hanging in his studio, like Stroviles, I don't know what which of those sort of old trumpet violin things, and just crazy stuff all around. So I was like, this is the kind of place we're going to get something interesting out of here, whatever happens. So we just literally go in the day and say, God, what's that one? Let's put that on. So, and then you work out a part for that, and then it gradually just became this sort of really interesting. I really that was a very pleasing record for me, because I was coming out of the sort of whole trauma of being a band, and it was all down to me and Will to just make something great, that we thought was great anyway. And,
are you talking about referring to Don Your Suit of Lights?
Yeah, Don Your Suit of Lights. That was, and even the title is like, come on, we're ready to go, we're back. And so I really enjoyed making that record, and it was really good fun experimenting and just having the freedom to not, because normally when it was the band, I'd sort of go, can you play that? And they go, no, piss off, I'm playing this. And so with the Mostar, no one was saying that to me. I could just do whatever I fancied doing, and it was a real freedom release for me. So I really fond of that record.
Okay. Well, first I want to say I like the album covers.
Well, that's me.
Okay, I was wondering. I was wondering.
I draw that. That's what I did. I did an art degree, okay. So but I've never used it apart from doing the record covers and the artwork. So I just I draw those and
you're using it. You're using it now. So
yeah, exactly.
There you go. Well, I like with his new armor, that the intro track off of that. That's a really nice one. And
that's a sort of statement to Armed, with his new armor. I'm ready to take it on. I'm coming for you.
Bring it on. Yeah. Right. And then Vagabonds and Clowns. The chorus has a playful, childlike feel.
Yeah.
I like.
That's what people say.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's a bit like that was just, I don't know what that was really about necessarily, but it was about, people that you hang around with who are all sort of, a bit on the alternative side of life.
Right. Right. Well, I have probably my favorite track on the album is The Great Explorers.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
about my kids. So
Yeah.
that's probably, and that's basically just talking to them, going, this is a great place, go and enjoy it, life
Right.
is good. Yeah.
Exactly.
They were very young when I did that album. I think they're probably 5 and 3, and they were just in everything, exploring around, doing,
Uh,
going into everything that was sacred to us, and pulling things out, it was like they are exploring around.
and kind of in
And to my wife, actually, so that she gets a nod in that song as well.
and in a little way, maybe living vicariously through your children, and going back to innocence,
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, that's always a tricky place to try and get to, isn't it? It's sort of
Yeah.
it just you lose that as you get older and wiser.
Yeah, you do.
You know?
We really do.
Yeah.
Forever Goodbye is another really nice track off of that.
Yeah, that's I mean, basically most of the names of the songs are kind of, well, on that album in particular, I really remember they all have working titles which were very different to what I named them. I think that was, at one point, that was called In the Garden of Forever or something like that. And it's just basically about being in a beautiful spot, as far as I can remember, sort of enjoying the lovely things around,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that was used on a film, actually, that song.
Oh, really? Which movie? Which film?
It was called Waiting for Forever.
Okay.
And it was the whole reason I got the film was because someone heard that track and liked it, and then I wrote a few other tracks for the film as a result of that. So that's why it holds a special spot in my heart.
Right.
Made some money off it, made money. Yeah.
Well, what songs, most Mostar songs have been played on commercials that I might know?
Well, the first one was Honey Tree, the Honey Tree, which is obviously a very, super happy song.
Yeah.
And I wrote that because I was feeling quite happy, and we had lots of funny things in the studio, like this little buzzy bee that was attached to a sound box, and you twisted it and it would sort of go wah, 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 like, oh, that sounds great, let's put that on something. And so that sort of formed the idea of the Honey Tree, and I was like, everything's going well, that's sort of sentiment. So that one was used for quite a few commercials, actually. And then the biggie was Give a Little Love, which came on the next record. I think that was when I took that into my publishers. They were like, I could see the dollar signs spinning around in their eyes. You got any more of those?
They're licking their lips and
yeah, literally. Anyway, so that was great, and that got used before the album was even finished. They got that on an advert. I played it to them at a meeting, and they said, "Oh, we like that one." So that's been a very good song for me, actually. Although I've never played it live, and it's certainly not my favorite song I've written. It's done very, it's done well for me. So I'm proud of it from that point of view. Yeah.
Right. Speaking of Triumph of Hope, was that 2012 or 13 that came out?
I think it was 2013, but some of the stuff was used in 2012. Okay. It was actually released, I think, in 2013, as far as I remember. Okay. But yeah, that was back in the studio with Will, sort of with a newfound confidence, because the first one had done quite nicely. So I'd written all the songs for it and went back in and just did. And by then, I think he'd moved studios miles away from where I live. So it became a bit more of a schlep to do it, and go all the way across town. But it was, again, then I'd done a few live shows. So I had a band that were involved in that record. So Vicky, the original drummer, and Michael, who's actually been a stalwart member. He's the only one that stuck it the whole way through. And he, so yeah, so that's, and so I had more people playing on that record other than Will and I.
Okay.
You know, they came into the studio and put drum tracks down and cello and piano and like Father Time and stuff. But that's all Michael's piano playing. You know, so jazzy. He's a very good piano player, basically, and I'm pedestrian to say the least in comparison. I just do the chords, fancy chords, and he just comes and twinkles it, you know. And he does all the cello stuff on the records as well. Certainly from Triumph of Hope onwards.
Yeah, cello is one of my favorite instruments.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I hear it, I'm just like, oh, it sounds so nice. Whenever he comes over here to do a session, it's a very fun day for me, because I just play my songs and suddenly they sound really nice with a bit of cello and, you know, or whatever we decide. So he can play a lot of things, Michael, but you know, so.
Well, what is the song "Train of Roses"? What's that all about?
I've got all the lyrics written down here somewhere. Let me just have a look if I can find them, and then I can give you a proper good answer for it. Here we go. Triumph of Hope. Train of Roses. Okay. I remember what that's about. Yeah, that's about basically when I was 19, I went to India and went to Goa to the sort of mad trance parties, you know, that they had there, and it's all sort of connected with that, and going into the parties and everything sort of, you know, like nothing you've ever seen before, and sweeps you off into its madness. So that was that's really what that's the general feeling of that song's about. Like I can see the lyrics, like yeah, there she goes, my sweet baby Jane, where she goes, she came to lose her head for a while. So it's about, but yeah, it's probably about sort of sitting on the edge, seeing some gorgeous girl dancing in under the palm trees, you know, and thinking how nice, what a great life we're in. Yeah.
Yeah. Broken and Borrowed. I like the banjo in that.
Yeah, that is Tom Worsley, I think, played that, who's the Obi bass player. I think he came into the studio one day with his cousin, and we needed some banjo, and I was struggling around trying to play it, and he just said, "Give it to me," and we put a couple of mics on him, and off we went. But yeah, he played that, and then I did the video for it with their other cousin, who's called Ig, and he's really nice guy. And I went and stayed with him down in Devon for a few days, and we made the video for it, which is, you know, good fun if you've seen it. It's quite good, you know.
Yes, it is. I like that.
Having a laugh down in Devon, basically.
And then one last track from that album, Setting Suns, I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's about my brother. I'm pretty sure that song's about my brother. Let me have a quick reflect. Am I disappearing when I go off into this?
Oh no, you're still there.
Okay. Yeah. Is that yes, that's about my brother and how, you know, he was probably annoying me at the time. But yeah, it's basically, let's get on, you know. It's cool to sort of, you know, you've been up on the mountainside for too long, you know, come back to me. you're you know, you're being too mad. Anyway, so that's, yeah, I don't even know if he knows that that's a song about him. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe he'll watch this and he'll find out.
Yeah, well, I see him all the time. But it's just at that particular moment in life, he was bugging me. I was just concerned. I was concerned for him, really. That was what it was about. I was concerned that he was going in the wrong direction. So I hope it was a sort of call to, you know,
rein him in.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. I don't think it works.
Well, jumping up to Horizontal Hotel from 2015. So let
Yeah.
me ask, is this a kind of an oxymoron contradiction? Because the hotels are usually are more than one story.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's basically the whole idea of that title is being being horizontal, sort of laid back,
okay.
and just basically like an idea where you just go into a hotel and lie down, take a breather. That was another third album, Crisis Point. So, and Will had sort of got, I think I detected he'd got a little tired of doing, we'd sort of exhausted all our mad experiments, but I really needed to make another record. And so we did that record, and it's actually one of my favorite. I think if I had to pick one album, that would be my favorite. And I don't know why that is. I just think the song, because I didn't put anything for the publishers on there.
Okay.
If you know what I mean. They wanted Happy, Give a Little Love times 5.
Right.
And I'm just going to do exactly what I want. So in fact, with that album, I released another album with that album that just went to the publishers, which was Happy Songs. I think I even called it Happy Songs just to sort of make a point. And then Horizontal Hotel was my album of songs that I was really enjoyed the writing of, and I thought they were fitted together quite well as a unit of songs. And so yeah, that was that one.
Let's see if you and I agree on favorite tracks. Quiet Hands.
Yeah, Quiet Hands, great. I mean, that's an expression that my sister-in-law said to me one day, and she was talking about this girl, and she said she's got very quiet hands. I was like, Christ, I've never heard that before. I'm nicking that right away. So I went and wrote a song about that sort of thing. Yeah. But I really like that one, and I've done there's a live video of that we did in the lockdown actually, as a band, which is quite a rare thing. Well, I think that's the only one that exists where we're all playing together, but we're all in different houses.
Right. Well, and then probably my two favorites off that, Crooked Sea and Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, well, you got great taste. I mean, Cuckoo's Nest, one of my favorite, again because it's a piano one, and I was trying to get away from doing everything on the guitar, and I came up, and that's actually it's got there's a bit, the piano riff is kind of slightly taken from another song I'd heard on the TV, and then I got it, and then I got the cello involved, and then it just sounded really peachy, so I sort of went with that. And that's about, let me have a look at the lyrics again, and I'll see if I can enlighten you into what it is. Where is it? Let's get back to sorry, this is very unprofessional music. Horizontal Hotel. Okay, so what was it? Cuckoo's Nest lyrics. Yeah, so this is basically about my own state of mind, and what I think of what I was thinking about the world at the time. It's basically Into the Cuckoo's Nest, which is like that lovely film that we all know with Jack Nicholson, or the book.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah. So it's it's sort of inspired by that, sort of loosely, how my life was heading at the time.
Yeah, and I love all songs that referring to water and oceans, and that's why Crooked Sea is
Crooked Sea is another lovely cello track as well. He's really nice cello.
Yeah,
and that's just about wanting to float off into the ocean, basically.
Yeah. and
riding all those crooked waves that we all have to ride through life.
I think we've all been there at some time.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so it's 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 a good, I can't remember really the lyrics again are sort of they're like, yeah, I'm here and I'm not letting go, you know, that says it all.
Yeah.
Hello, my heart is beating still, you know. I think it was a message really to my publisher as well. I quite like to write things to my publisher every now and then, go, hello. So yeah, that was to them really. Hello, my heart is beating still, I'm here and I'm not letting go. So, you know,
Right. You
yeah,
can kind of do it as an allegory and
yeah,
kind of slam them, and they don't really know they're being
yeah.
slammed.
I'm sure they've had absolutely no idea. Well, I know they've got no idea. I'd be very surprised if they'd listen to, you know, they need the instant hit of
Yeah.
good vibes, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Publisher.
Well, let's jump up to 2018's Here Comes Joy, Sparks. I like that one. I like the video. I watched the
Yeah,
video.
that's good. That's basically, well, I was now I'd left Will as a producer, and I'd gone to a party, a BMG party, where they invite all the people that have done well over the year or whatever. And I met at that party a producer called Pete Hobbs, who was basically, well, he was the only person I really met at the party, and we chatted. And I said, I'm looking for another producer. I've got a whole load more songs. Are you up for it? So he said, yeah, come over and come over and have a. So I went to his studio with all the songs. So I'd done most of them at my home studio, like made them how I wanted to be, and then we went and honed them and re-recorded them all with some nice equipment, basically. Yeah. So, and I was back on foot. You know, I was back sort of feeling in a positive energy at that time, because it was new ground, and I like new ground. I don't really look back that much, as you can probably tell by me having to look at all the songs. But yeah, I sort of move forward, basically. It's the name of the game.
Sorry to stump you so many times.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's good. It's good for me. It's good for me. It's
I should have probably prefaced that and said I would do some questions about songs, but Lovely Bones. Lovely Bones is another.
Yeah, Lovely Bones is about the kids again. You know, that's a classic all out love song to the kids. You know, hopefully they'll know it one day. They're downstairs actually, but that's for them. As a few on this record, I think, I can't remember what ones are on it, but let's have a look. My screen. So Lovely Bones is Sparks is about me as a dad, you know, being a sort of, you know, slightly different from a lot of dads, I guess, and similar to other ones. that's sort of, you know, the stresses of being a dad and trying to do what you're doing. And Lovely Bones is basically about them being great, you know. And they and I think they're in all the videos that I've done, apart from the last one. They feature my kids sort of, and my wife films them, so it's all a very sort of family affair. We just make them. Apart from that first one, Broken and Borrowed, which I did with Ig and with Tom's cousin, and he, you know, when we were doing that, I was sort of learning, you know, how relatively straightforward it, you know, you just basically need a nice something to look at while you're listening to the song, and it's got to be slightly appropriate. And you know, so it was, I thought, right, I'll get the family on it on the summer holidays. Take some cameras and make a movie. Yeah, and then I edit it all and do all that myself at home. Homespun.
Special mention for If You Loved Her. If You Love Her. If You Love Her.
Yeah, If You Love Her. That's to my good lady, and Robin, and I just, you know, that's you know, giving me a G up, you know, stop being an idiot, basically, get, you know, that kind of thing. So that's
and in particular the the silent film clips. Where did those come from? What
Oh,
movie?
yeah, I found those. I was basically trawling the internet for some content, interesting content, and I stumbled across that film, and I was like, this just works so well.
It pieced together so well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I basically, it was a longer, much longer film, and I basically just cut it to what I thought, like there were lyrics, like I can't remember. I remember like the look in your eyes and something, and she looks up like that,
Right.
at him, and all these sort of things, it just seemed to be like, this is the perfect thing to go with the music, and it works really nicely with the music. I think I like that.
Like
So,
like the old, I don't know if it's Urban Myth, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and synchronizing that with for a while there, they were saying that Wizard of Oz. There we go, Wizard of
right.
Oz. Did you do that? Did you try that?
What's that? Oh, what's looking? There's some. I've heard the thing, but I can't remember what it
Yeah,
is. But they
started at the same time. Dark Side of
right.
the Moon,
Yeah, and
Wizard of
it's
Oz.
like it's a soundtrack for the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think great music works well with great visuals. And so I think it's just a complete coincidence, really. That one, I'd say, but it's it definitely would work well with it because it's fantastic soundtrack for anything, isn't it? So
yes, it is.
that's the sort of and that's kind of the basis I'm working on when I get visuals, and you've got a lovely soundtrack. Generally most visuals will look good with good song.
Yeah, yeah. But I do like the black and white take that you approach
Yeah,
those with the
yeah,
sepia
yeah.
tone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I wanted to make everything sort of slightly old-fashioned and a bit like me.
Right, you're reflected in the songs in the video.
Yeah,
Well, let's go to last year's Glass Monkeys.
yeah.
To, Treasure from the Dirt. I
So
like the lyrics
that
in that. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, this is an album that I did basically. I was in just before lockdown. I went with Pete Hobbs again. I had a whole load of songs ready to go again, and I was like, "Are you up for doing another one?" And he was quite busy, but he said, "Yeah, I'll give it a go, but you do most of the work, and I'll put it through my machines, to make it sound nice." Anyway, we did a couple of weeks in the studio on another completely different album, and after 2 weeks, the pandemic hit, and he was very paranoid about the pandemic and didn't want me anywhere, didn't want anyone in his house. So I had basically a year of doing no music in a studio. But I had my studio at home, so I started playing around with some stuff, and all the things I was recording at home, I was actually preferring to what I'd done in the studio. So I was like, I'm going to can that album. Well, I actually didn't can it because I went back and finished the album that I was doing with him, which is called Animals Need Warmth. And I've actually printed it all out and done CDs and everything, but it's on a shelf in my studio, just sort of winking at me, going, hopefully, maybe in a few years, I'll play it and go, actually, this is quite nice, and I'll put it out. But at the moment, I'm not enjoying it. So I was enjoying this one a lot more, and it was very stripped back, and I recorded everything and played everything myself. So apart from a couple of instruments that I got Michael to come in and play, but otherwise it's about as all me as you can as you can come across. So yeah, in a way, so I'm quite sort of proud of it, but it's definitely different from the other ones. It's not quite as involved, and it's quite stripped back, but it's nice because I've done it in at home. And that one you're saying, Treasure from the Dirt, was that's one of the first songs ever that I went for a walk and just wrote down couplets that sort of fitted into that rhythm. So I was walking along going, I hope you're doing well wherever you might be, you know, like this, and then writing it all in my phone. And I had a list when I got back of about hundreds of lines, and then I just picked out the ones that I liked and made vague sense in a line. So it's like my David Bowie experiment, you know, where he used to put all the lyrics in a hat and pull them out, supposedly. I never quite believed that, but I thought I'd do my own experiment, and that's what came out of it. And it's sort of, it does vaguely make sense, you know, if you read into the lyrics.
Well, I have to ask you, and I'm sure you've been asked this many times, where does much of the inspiration for your songs come from? Is it certain times of the day, certain places?
There's no rules, basically. It just comes at any, you know, I mean, sometimes I can go for months without doing anything, and then I'll write 3 songs in a day, because I'm in a particularly fine mood that day, or something's happened, or I've just happened to be on my own with some breathing space, or, you know, but there's not any set time. I do come into the studio every day at like 10 o'clock and try and do something, whether it makes the grade or not is another thing. Normally, you know, a lot of it doesn't make the grade. You know, I've got hundreds of songs that will never see the light of day, probably. I've got a big archive of little ideas, and hundreds of ideas on the phone as well, you know, like 400 ideas at the moment on this phone. That are just ideas that, you know, you write like a little bar of music and you go, oh, that's really nice. And occasionally you come back to them and work on them, or, you know, if you really get the feeling that it's a nice one, you sort of pursue it. And really, it's like nowadays the lyrics are much more tricky than anything else for me. The lyrics are the thing I spend most time on, trying to make them as good as, you know, I don't want to release anything that I don't think is cracking, you know. That's my
Well, I have to say that, you know, you have a wealth of lyrics, and you don't seem to tread on old territory. You know, I don't.
I mean, the general vibe is just forward direction. So, like, you know, things like getting Obi back together would just, I don't think would happen, because or going back to previous albums, you know, they're just, you know, I've done that and I'm happy with it. Let's go on to the next thing. And so
that was a certain place and time, right?
I mean, they're like little snapshots of where your life is at that particular time. And, you know, some of them are, you know, like Diving Bell, I can see winking at me. That's you know, that's my dad and I having a conversation about, you know, I raised you from a child, you know, you grew so strong and wild, and all this sort of, you know, they're basically, and, you know, we have a sort of interesting relationship, because he's definitely wasn't keen on me entering the musical realm. I think he's come around to it now. I just think he's resigned to it now. But, you know, we get on well. But you know, I have to write. You know, it's nice to write things which can sort of get it out of your system. You know, and so you know, and that's a good way of, you know, releasing your emotions or whatever it might be. Your pent up frustrations.
Sometimes demons, getting those demons out too.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of songs that deal with that. I mean, I was having an interview the other day, and they were saying, you know, your songs are so relentlessly positive, and I was like, have you really listened to everything properly? I said I try and keep it on the bright side, but every now and then I stray off. But generally, people like hearing, you know, like hearing more sort of beautiful songs than sort of morbid, like everything's heavy, you know. So I try and keep on that side of things.
Well, you know, for me, like I said, the melancholy, it's what feeds me. I mean, it's I guess I have a different way of looking at life, you know, because
Mm.
getting down in it is what inspiring to me, you know,
Yeah.
is really, really feeling those. And it doesn't depress me like, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
like some people. So I can really kind of, like I
Just
said, just
enjoy it.
around, yeah, enjoy it, you know,
Yeah.
because those are some of the most beautiful songs.
Yeah,
You know?
I agree. I mean, I think, you know, I mean, Nick Drake's,
Right.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
his third album, which is just stripped back, him and a guitar, I think is one of the most brilliant things ever, you know, and he was obviously in a really bad way when he wrote that. And the songs are all pretty much like, I'm a pariah, I'm the black dogs on me, you know, they're all very heavy duty lyrically, but the music is beautiful, you know, so it just, you can ride over those lyrics and even enjoy them, you know.
There you go. Find the
But
beauty. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically the beauty, you know, the beauty is in the music and the melody and everything and the way the words fit in, you know. A lot of people, you know, the people who, you know, who listen very intently to lyrics are quite a rare breed, I
Yeah.
think.
Right.
I'm certainly one of those because I write lyrics all the time. But you know, some people I know, you talk to them about a song and they're like, "Oh, does it say that? I've never listened to the lyrics." What? How can you not listen to the lyrics? You know, but people are like that. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, jumping back real quick to Glass Monkey's Sleep, another
Mm,
great
yeah,
track. And
that
then
is
go ahead.
that is kind of. Well, let's have a look at that one. Yeah, I mean that's basically just about trying to have some calm, you know, some calm time. And yeah, what's full? Yeah, I mean, it's basically, and it's kind of a love song as well. You know, it's got an element of that. You know, um, hold me so close to you and hold me forever like you used to do. So it's basically to my wife. You know, let's get back to how things were. You know, when we were all free and easy. You know,
Yeah.
um, so I suppose that's, yeah. I mean, that's a sort of plea song, really. Um, rest my bones beside your throne, you know, come and meet me, you know, come and be here and present, you know, all
Right.
that sort of thing. Because, you know, when you obviously have kids and family, things sort of go a bit asunder every now and then
Mm-hmm.
because the tensions are in different places, you know. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what that's about.
Yeah.
And it was also, there was this great song by who was it by? I think it's Laura Marlin and Ray LaMontagne,
Okay.
which was called Sleep as well. And I like that song a lot, so I thought I'd do my own version of it. But it's nothing like, you know, it's nothing like theirs. But that was I'd listened to that track quite a lot
Yeah.
um, before I did that one.
And then one last mention, Molly May, echoes of Paul Simon, I hear in that song.
Well, that's very kind of you. But
I do. Go back and
he's
listen
that's
to it.
actually one of my wife's favorite songs as well. She really likes that one, and it's literally just me and a guitar, that one. And
Yeah.
it's so you can hear all the kind of, you know, intricate picking work, you know.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a nice, you know, it's not particularly about, I'm just trying to find the lyrics for that one as well now, even though it's so recent. Where are we? Molly May. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know what, you know, that's like a sort of, I think the words for that just basically fit into the tune that I've got going. So when I'm writing something and I get a thing on the guitar
Mm.
and it's just bouncing along really nicely, and then I need to fit something into it. And I think I came up with Oh Molly May,
Mhm.
um, was the first Oh Molly May, and as a refrain. And then
Mhm.
I had to sort of fit something round that to make it into a song that sort of makes vague sense. I suppose it may, you know, you can read your own read your own interpretation into it. It could be about a sort of local hussy, it could be about your dearest wife, or it could be about who is Molly May. I don't know.
Well, go back and just listen to that. I think it's the phrasing and the rhythm texture.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically that's sort of a lot about what it, love me to death, oh, it's all in my head. I know that I'm really not well. Everything goes, and that I do know I'm falling under your spell, oh, Molly May. Yeah, it's kind of like what they say. Show me the way to the beautiful places you seem to hold in your hands. It's all sort of like, I need some guidance. That's kind of it, yeah.
Holding in your quiet hands.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. I mean, they're all, it's a sort of green, I mean, they're sort of, this album really is a collection of what I was doing in lockdown.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of got those together, and they were all the songs that I wasn't working on the other album. So certainly on the I mean, I can show you because it's just here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the album that's not coming out. Can you see that?
Yes, I see that.
So it's called Animals Need Warmth, and it's basically, so a lot of the tracks on this will see the light of day at some stage, but just not like they are here. So there's one of a kind, there's, what is it, Pushing Buttons. Actually, I've released a video for that quite recently, which I made on holiday in France with the kids. So we've done another video, and that's the song we chose, and it's another black and white one, and we're filmed in a sort of shed in France. So it's really, and I really like that song, so I'm definitely gonna get that on an album at some stage, but it won't be quite in that guise, because there's a whole load of ones that aren't really, like Heavy as Lead is one that I just, every time I listen to it, it makes me slightly sort of go like that, lift the shoulders and go, ooh. So yeah, that's all for the future. Next project.
So you have lots of songs in the vault.
Yeah, I mean, literally hundreds and hundreds of ones that haven't seen the light of day. And I've got boxes, when we used to do Obi, I've got boxes of old cassette tapes with ideas on that never materialized into anything.
Right.
But I suppose, that's the way, I guess, if you're a painter, you probably have loads of canvases that you've scrunched up and thrown into the bin, or or files of sketchbooks. You have loads of sketchbooks. That's what I was going to ask
you. Do you have a sketchbook? Those the album covers. Do you have some that you've done, or do you do it specifically for the album?
And I've got some. I mean, basically, I do them specifically for the when I've got the album ready and I need to do the artwork. I think, right, picture. What am I going to do for this one? What most suits it? And then set about drawing it. But I've done a lot of covers that I haven't, I've got not a lot. I mean, I've probably got about 3 or 4 that I drew and then thought, actually, I'll do something else. So, but they're there. I've still kept them because they take a long time to do, the sort of line drawings. And I go over, I basically draw it as a line drawing. And then I go to I've got a good friend, Yuki, who does helps me color them, and he's good on the Photoshop or whatever he uses. I never know, but we've got a sort of color palette that we work from,
right?
And then we sort of drop the colors in. I sit with him for an afternoon and go, and we play around and then live with it for a few days, and then go, actually, that orange is a bit too bright.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so
I do like the color scheme that you go with.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, I really like it as well. That's kind of, that's why they're like that, because I like, it's what I'd like to receive, you know, if I was a punter. And you got to think about, you know, you have to think about that if you're making it as a sort of, as a thing to live from, you know, you got to make it so you hope people will like it and enjoy it and buy it and keep you in clover, as they say.
There you go. Well, I'm sure. I mean, you hear from your fans all the time.
Yeah, I got a very lovely message just this morning from someone who's been listening to me since the Obi days in Holland. You know, I'm like, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
One
thing I was going to say about you, Damien, is you seem to be truly in your element with all of the music that emanates from within you.
Well, that's a very nice thing to hear.
Yeah.
I think I am. I really feel it. You know, I feel it as a thing that, you know, I have to do. So I can't not do it. And now I'm too far down the road to do anything else. A bit of house building every now and then, but basically I'm earning, you know, I get enough kind of film and TV stuff and adverts to, you know, keep the wolf from the door.
Yeah, but you know, it reminds me of one quote from one song. If you've got one dream, shouldn't it be realized? Because it's only inside, it starts to drag you down.
Right. Nice.
Yeah. I always remember that.
Yeah. And that's kind of what it's like. You know, I'm just you have to, and if you're coming up to a studio every day, like I do, and spend most of the day in here on my own, surrounded by my collection of instruments, it can be difficult and it can be great fun. You know, it's got everything in it.
If you're an artist of any kind, musician, what have you, you've got to live that life. It's got to come. So
you know, it is true.
It's a lifelong deal too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And you know, hopefully long may it continue. You know.
Amen to that. Well, real quickly, what's on the immediate horizon?
I'm just basically doing more, writing more music. You know, that's really all I'm doing. I'm hoping to have a show in November. I'm trying to hire a theatre at the moment to do that, because I sort of do one-off shows, because I did do a tour actually a couple of years ago, all around Britain, but it's hard work and it's not that lucrative, you know. It's a nice time and it's nice to meet some people, but really, you know, if you're doing it to earn a living, it's pretty difficult. So what I normally do is just hire a really beautiful space for about 300 people, and then set about filling it up with people who want to come, normally in London, and then I get the band together and then we play a nice show. But that's really you know, they're pretty rare. I think the last big one I did was 3 years ago, possibly. So but I'm kind of keen to do another one. So we'll see. It's good to keep your hand in on those sort of things. Not just be totally reclusive writing music.
You're right about that. Well, Damien, it's been very enjoyable. I had an inclination it would be. So I've enjoyed your time, your stories, sharing some. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been very good fun.
Well, I'm glad.
Talk about my musical journey.
Right.
Yeah.
Glad I can do that. Reciprocate some way. Yeah. All right.
And I'll show you. I want to show you this album before you go offline.
Sure.
Just to show you that it does exist.
Okay.
If I can find it back here. So this is the lost album of Obi.
There we go.
It's got sort of, I don't know, it's got quite a few tracks on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10. Got 12 tracks on it. It's got the second part of Fairground, you know, which appeared on Dice Man.
Right.
And it's got, you know, it's got some good numbers on it. Don't Leave Me to Die. That's a very that's that. And oh, and it's got Ghosts and Engineers. It's a classic. I think you'd really like that one because that's it's similar to Plague on This House, but it's like it was the last thing I recorded in the studio with Obi on my own on a piano with an engineer and no one else there. Just did the song, and it's quite good. So I've got a soft spot for that, but you know, obviously things moved on, so I never got a chance. They all the Obi, the guys are, you know, always wanting to release it and do something with it, but that would basically be me doing all the work. So I'm like, okay, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice to hear the tracks off of that. That would be
yeah. Well, I'll send you a copy if you say, you know, send me your address and I'll.
Okay.
I'll
Very nice of you, Damien.
Yeah.
Do that after we're done here, and I'll send you. But I will let you know once I have this edited a little bit.
Yeah.
And then send you the link, of course. And then you can post it on your social and you know, let everybody know.
I'll do that.
And see what kind of reaction and response and comments. That's what I enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, that's you know, it's nice to hear when, you know, when you get nice feedback from doing something like this. It's very nice. You know, it makes it all worthwhile, really.
It really does. Yes, it does. All right, Damien. Well, we will be in touch. And again, I appreciate your time so much and for sharing. Thank you.
Pleasure. Cheers.